intuition is like being able to make better decisions for ourselves, and it's empowering, and it creates confidence, and it allows us to really connect more to like who we are and what it is that our soul really is here for. On another level, it opens up like a whole other way of relating to everything and whole other languages. You know, energy is our first language. It is the language that we really live in and that we communicate in the most, whether we know that or not. And it's why so much of what happens and where conflicts come from, as well as where like love and connection comes from, it is in the unspoken, because it's all there. Welcome, dear friends. How are you? And what is moving through you as you listen to our recent episodes? Do get in touch and share with us or leave us reviews that others can find. Our next Members Soul Space for Presence Collective is happening on July 9th on the theme of Permission to Shine. You are so welcome to join this, whether a member or not. We do a group energy activation on this theme, planting new seeds within. This weekend is our Devon weekend. It's going to be so sweet to gather. On the Friday night, it will be a live podcast with special guests Helena Norberg-Hodge, Anthea Lawson, and Jay Spencer Keys. And on Saturday, it will be a day retreat on the theme of remembering. There is still space to come and join us. In the UK, we will be fresh off the election results, and it will be good to be in community, whatever way it goes. Our live edition of Reclaim Your Intuition starts later this month after the full moon, and you can register now. It will include 6 live weekly calls, as well as games, rituals, and more to support a powerful relationship with your intuition. Every person who joins will also get a free intuitive therapy session with me. It feels good to journey through this in the height of summer and use this time to expand possibilities, ready for the fresh start that autumn brings. A lot of this journey is designed to do offline, so you can do it whilst you're out walking through forests and smelling the blooming flowers. There are some parts that are online, but you can also put them in your headphones and sit in nature and do them without the videos. It's all there to open up that space within you. This week, we have a special episode where the microphone has been turned and I am being interviewed. We like to do these every now and then, and I know that you all enjoy these ones. For this episode, we recorded it in Devon, out amongst the birdsong and the ticks, and alongside my familia Shambo, who is a dog for those of you that have not yet met him. My guest host is Jasmine Louella Paprika, who lives amongst the wildflowers and birdsong in South Devon, learning what it means to be deeply connected to the ecology of this locality. After 18 years in New Zealand, Jasmine is spending this season of her life reacquainting herself with the mystical, mycelial, and magical land of Albion, otherwise known as Britain, and how the stories of this place made her bones and blood. She is on a slow apprenticeship of becoming into birth work and can currently be found exploring the depths of the womb world. Jasmine used to host a podcast called The Microwave, which hosted playfully authentic and vulnerable chats on identity and belonging. Meeting Jasmine and her family this past year has been a really special experience for me personally, as well as in understanding the power of this podcast and what we have been creating here for these past years. In this conversation called Reclaim Your Intuition, The Path of Beauty, we explore the question, how do we reclaim our intuition and make better decisions for ourselves and the collective? We hope that this conversation opens up new aspects of the unseen world for you. Welcome to All That We Are, with me, your host, Amisha Ghadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community, or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing and envisioning, we create the futures of our wildest dreams. And we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible.
It's so beautiful to be here and to get to look into what's there for you right now as the person that has created this beautiful space, this all that we are, and also just to check in with Amisha in this moment and to hear what's alive for you and what's ready to be born and flow through. I'm so excited.
It feels really good to be sat here with you, Jasmine, and I feel like we've shared a lot over the last 6 months and been in this space like very much in person and in the different responsibilities and things that I'm holding at the moment. And to know that this podcast has been with you for many years, for me, that's been, a really powerful experience of getting to see a little bit of what it is that we're doing and seeing that kind of what that momentum is that pushes me and Annagret and Mary to keep making this show. To get to experience how it touches people and what it brings into their lives, your life, your sister, your mother's lives. Like, it's just been a really, really beautiful experience.
And it really does. Like, I mean, obviously this is a testament to that, but I'm sure there are so many other people who, this podcast has weaved in and just been this really, this like core, I don't know what the word is, like kind of like the core of a tree. Like, it's always there and it's such a safe, beautiful space. It's such an inspiring space. And I'm really looking forward to getting to kind of weave out some of the bits that have woven into it and look at them and see them and understand this journey for you and what it's been like. I'd love to hear just right now what is alive for you in this moment, in your body and in your heart.
I feel incredibly grateful to be sat here with the sun is shining and we are surrounded by trees and green and wildflowers, foxgloves. Shambo is here, my familia, and we're on this very, very special piece of land and piece of earth, and getting to be sat outside and feeling the wind gently kiss our skin. And it feels really special to be in this space. And I feel like something that I've become a bit of a ninja at, with, I'd say varying ninja skills, is moving between worlds that are really different. This being very different from the space that I was in just before I came here, which is a space of caring and of a lot of responsibilities and a lot of big noise and big energy. And then to kind of come here and be in the calm. And I was reflecting on that on my way here. When I started this journey, I was more free. And I was in a time in my life where, not to say there weren't responsibilities and there weren't a lot of things going on, because there always has been, but there was also a lot more freedom and a lot more ease in my own personal life and also in the collective field. And so getting to sit and share about beautiful futures, and I could feel that idealism in me and that dreamer, which I still very much have. And I think that they're very important qualities to preserve in humanity, especially as we feel like more and more in a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
That ability to dream is so fundamental to the beauty of being a human. And so, yeah, I feel like what is alive is like how we actually hold ourselves in beauty and create just enough space when life perhaps isn't giving that to us, and we are in all these different challenges and pressures. And I remember like when I used to kind of host meditation workshops and yoga workshops and retreats, and you know, there were parents and people with full-time jobs that would come and they'd be like, but how do you find that like 20 minutes? And I was like, oh, it's really easy. But actually I was living in a way where my primary value and I guess my primary point of attention in my life was on my spiritual path and my psychological development and that growth and living a life that was really alive in that sense. It is for sure harder when you're navigating lots of other things. You have a lot of responsibilities to other people and to systems that don't really match up with that kind of aliveness. Yeah, it's really got me feeling into how do we hold that connection to our true, deep, authentic, divine, beautiful selves and the interconnectedness of all of that divine beauty in and amongst all that kind of pressure. And I feel like collectively we are at a point where that pressure is mounting. And so it's happening in my own personal story, but it's happening in so many personal stories, and a lot of people are just being pushed through illnesses, pushed through caring for others that have illnesses, physical, mental health, spiritual, not having enough money for things, not being able to find a place to live, like just not being able to find work that's fulfilling, being exposed to all of the violence that's happening in the world, feeling that sense of fear around what's happening in our future and the political options that we have and all of the cuts to all the services that matter. So many things were just, it's just kind of coming in left, right and center. And that's not easy to navigate, and it is real and it's happening. And it really makes me feel into this thing of, how do we create that resilience, and I find the word resilience tricky because it's like, you know, you just have to be resilient. Like it's kind of got this sort of, when actually like, we also have to be soft and process all of this and move through it. And it's okay to suffer in it as well, to feel the pain and to feel the anger and to feel the edges. But at the same time, there are things that, you know, are enduring and go on for a really long time. And I feel like in our current culture, in our culture of the way that we communicate, with it being so much about texting, like how much time do we all spend reading and replying to text messages versus talking to people? And sometimes we're dealing with such tender things like grief, and the way that one's community expresses their love is through like emojis, and it doesn't touch that place that wants to be met in grief or in sadness or in fear or in, you know, whatever it is that we're holding. And so I feel like that's something that's really challenging, that we're kind of now many years into email as communication and texting as communication, and even just like, you know, voice notes are better, but it's still like how much you spend like waiting for someone to record a voice note and then listening to it and then recording it. It's so inefficient, and yet we do it, and it's so crazy. Like, and so I feel like there's also that loneliness that comes from not having those primary kind of ways of connecting like intact. I was noticing that a lot of times people message me and they'll say, hope you're thriving. And I'll get multiple messages in one day saying, hope you're thriving. And I'm like, sure, like, what do you even say to that? Like, was that, there's no question mark in it. And like, how many people are thriving right now? And amazing if you are, like, thank you for thriving. And like, yeah, keep thriving if you can. Or not, like whatever, just ride the waves. But I feel like there's not that space necessarily for what's in between, or hope you're okay. And I guess I'm feeling like a lot of what we really have to tend to in life is not short. It's something that will last for a significant period. If someone is going through grief and a person dies, that grief continues. It's not something that just happens for a month or 2 or 3 or even a year. It's something that that person will keep meeting and keep meeting, keep meeting. And things become normal, but people are still in that situation. I feel similarly about Gaza, like how many months that's been, and people are still in that situation. And so whatever it is that's happening for us, like in our lives, they tend not to be like, oh, now suddenly that's better and that's gone. And then even if like the main thing that's challenging stops, the healing processes are so long. So there's something for me there that's really alive today around like, how do we honor the long, deep, slow processes and know that that is just what it is to be human. And that is what we're all going through. And somewhere, especially because of the New Age personal development industry, there's this whole kind of thing of like, don't be a victim, and like, you know, and just bounce back and don't let it get to you. And it's like, well, yeah, but then it's going to come out sideways somewhere along the way. And I found that some of those people that call people victims can be the cruelest people. And where is that space between, okay, of course, like, if you can not wallow in something for longer than you need to, great. But if you're feeling something and if something's ongoing and it's hard, it is important to be able to be honest and real about that, because we're losing people. We're losing people in all kinds of different ways because this pressure is so strong, and because the spaces that people have to connect are lacking or they're expensive. And so that's what's alive for me today.
That thread of resilience that you spoke about, and also the kind of long, slow processes, just made me think of ecology immediately, and how we don't think a flower isn't resilient because it dies at the end of spring. And actually the resilience is in the whole system. And that's part of the long, slow processes. If a forest system gets a disease in some way, the effects of that are going to be long term, even if it does look like a thriving, you know, even if on the surface, you know, we're seeing green and we're seeing life. Actually, the processes beneath it, there will still be those wounds of that grief, or because that's you know we're humans and we are ecological beings, and it's just a really beautiful sharing.
The processes are long and slow, mostly.
Full stop. So much of what you spoke to there has made me think about, so in your first episode of The Future is Beautiful, All That We Are, you were talking to Charles Eisenstein, and but in your intro you said, I could have called this podcast The Future is FUCKED unless we do something about it. But actually there are so many incredible people whose work and presence in the world really is creating a beautiful future. And if more of us can be exposed to these people and ideas and rise up in ourselves, we really can create a beautiful future. So I'd like to invite you to reflect on that now. How do you feel about our collective future in this moment, and also our collective present? Because of course, when you said that 7 years ago, this was the future.
Wow. Well, I felt goosebumps when you said it, maybe because I wouldn't write those words today, and yet they hold such power. And I remember believing that so strongly and deeply in every part of my my cells and bones. I feel that there are so many beautiful people and such big hearts and beautiful minds that are creating and tending to and protecting so much of what it is that's of value. And that was always the point behind this work. That was always where this started, even before the podcast. When this started as a project in 2010, it was about us connecting to that aspect in us that knows something, that can create something, and that can dream in something. Where are we now? I mean, I don't know. I feel like something happens. I don't know if it happens with age or why it happens, but I feel like I have both more acceptance as well as that conviction that we all still have our part to play. Maybe I'm less results oriented or impatient. I can see the cycles a little bit differently than I could when I was younger, and I felt like, why? And now I guess I understand more of the really complex patterns and systems and interweavings, man-made, that we have, that have got us to where we are and how entrenched we are in it. And so perhaps things are going to get worse still before they get worse or they get better. I still hold a lot of hope for the beauty of humans and the way that we do tend to things and respond to things, and often can be, especially when some of those layers of separation get pulled away and we do connect more to that understanding of being in it together. I'm still really interested in 2026 as a marker of change, and that being a place that a lot of the wisdom traditions have mentioned. And I always remember Jyoti's words, who's been on the podcast a couple of times, around 2026, of the endings falling into the beginning. The endings falling into the beginning. Yeah, I sit with those words. And at the same time, I have absolutely no attachment or no knowledge of like what's going to happen. But I know that all we can do is kind of tend to what's in front of us with as much love and keep that dreaming capacity, visionary aspect of us alive and open. And then who knows?
I know that name changes are something that is alive right now. And this is something you've talked about before on the podcast, but I think the concept of people's wildest futures and wildest dreams, that has always stayed a real, pinnacle in throughout the episodes. And yet there was the change to all that we are. And weaving in this concept of both the beauty of humanity, but also something else, this change to all that we are. I'd love to invite you to speak on what's true in that at the moment, and maybe a little bit of why that still feels, why we're there.
I love all that we are. And I felt challenged with the future is beautiful for lots of reasons that I've shared before, but mostly because it means that we have to have a shared concept of what beautiful means. And I don't think we have that. As a culture, we tend to focus on like a very narrow aspect of reality. As like the dominant Western culture, it's often like about like beautiful is like good. And we also live in a culture that's got humongous shadows. And I'm not really interested in the beauty that's upheld at the cost of everyone else, like the majority of humans and the majority of all living species on this planet. I'm interested in beauty as a concept of a divine experience, and that no matter what it is, and even if that is extinction, that is beautiful, like that is the path that we're on, and whatever comes next will come next. And the dinosaurs were here, you know. Things change and things evolve, and that the path of beauty is being in the grace of that. And I feel like in the grace of that, it's also understanding like where we have power and what we can influence and change, what we stand for, what's okay and not okay, in like that space of integrity in our bones, and also an acceptance that we cannot change all of it, and that we don't even fully understand it all, and we never can, we never would, and we never can. I feel like when I'm talking about the future is beautiful, it feels like it kind of zones out into this much bigger concept of like planetary experience. We know that where we're at with humanity is you know, we're in a really icky place, and we've been in an icky place for as long as we know about. We know that this current reality of humanity that we're experiencing has always come at the cost of human lives, and there's always been a sacrifice of humans in order to maintain something else. But it's now more in our faces. We understand it more. We're able to access better information about it than perhaps people have been before. And that's a lot for us to process and to hold. We're in this place of, some of us that are in cultures where we have more freedom, like we're living very wild and free lives compared to even one generation before. Like it's extraordinary. And then the amount of understanding that we have around like the different systems and what we'll accept for ourselves and what we'll accept for others, like it is radical actually, and very quick, that change. And so I don't really know what's coming. Like I'm now in my 40s, it's like a different place, and it's like, yeah, it's a little bit of a space in between as well, of like there's so much that comes through with that young energy and so much in eldership. And then this kind of midlife place is like, it's a lot more busy. It's like full. It's very full of responsibility and kind of holding those two other spaces of like the new energy and the older energy. And for me, that comes with a lot of grace of like, okay, I don't know, I'm at service now to all these energies and these different wisdoms and these different knowings, which I'm quite enjoying. Like I can feel in me that youthful like energy that I had even 7 years ago is different. And that's nice. It's like, it just is what it is. It's just different. It's like, there's less knowing. There's less of a like this is what it is. And then it puts me into a really different space of listening, which is also really wonderful. All that we are encompasses so much of the shadow and what it's taken to get to where we are as well. It also brings in so much of the unseen, which is really important for me to honor and acknowledge, that there is so much more than we can see, and actually really invites that space and that understanding. And I feel like that's something that I'm really grateful for in the times that we're in. It's just becoming more and more normal for people to talk to trees and to be in more open, dynamic relationships with nature and with plants, with their ancestors, with the future generations, that we're tapping into more multidimensional spaces of communication, just as kind of normal. And that definitely wasn't something that people did or talked about doing even 7 years ago. So that feels like really amazing to kind of be experiencing that. And it's why I really feel like the visionary aspect is so important, because we have so much wisdom and information that's moving through us, that we came into this planet with, and that we're kind of constantly in the soul communication. It's so important to open up space for more of that energy to come through. And that really is the thread of where all of my work like interconnects, that we become more proficient in the language of our souls and the language of energy, and that language of our wisdom that is so connected to the trees and the rivers and our ancestors and our future generations, and that speaks to us in ways that we can't even really explain, but we can feel it. Like, wow, can we feel it in our cells and in our bones? I love that everyone can tap into that. There's a lot that can get in the way, and that's part of it, clearing some of that is in the way. And you know, that is what I like to do with my like one-to-one work and with the retreats and events and things that I create, is like creating those spaces. And I've come to see how special that is, to prioritize and to make space for our souls to speak through us, to also devote time to understanding our patterning and what we're carrying and what we're processing, what we're contributing to, like a picture of change. Because what I notice about these big cultural changes that happen is that they happen through our individual lives and stories, and we don't really understand that that's what's happening at the time. But then suddenly you get to a place a few years later and you notice that there's a completely different understanding of something than there was a few years before. And how did that happen? It happened in like every home and every community, and then something different is understood. And of course, some people are really wounded by it, and some people are freed by it, and yet there is a different way of understanding dynamics.
For those people who are listening who are like, I kind of know what that feels like, but I kind of want to know more of it, or I want to practice that more, like have a space to practice that tuning into that knowing. I know at the moment you're birthing a new space where that's kind of the main focus, and I'd love for you to talk to what that's going to look like, and kind of how people even might feel called to join, like what that might look like for them.
Yeah, well, I want to share that we have this membership space for All That We Are, which was called Presence Collective and is, again, going to be called Presence Collective because it's such a nice invitation. And there's so many resources in there that I have recorded over many years of meditations, and there's a whole course on learning how to meditate. There's various different workshops, and so I've made that to be a space that's not just really nice because we get to connect like live in person, and I love like getting to meet you all and like knowing your names and getting to spend that time together. But I have made this space where there's loads there, so it can get forgotten about, but it is all there. It's a really great set of resources. I've been working on a space called Reclaim Your Intuition. Having written a book on intuition now 4 years ago, which was such an incredible thing to be asked to do, and as it happened, to write during the first lockdown in a treehouse. You can't make it up. Sometimes life does things like that. And then to have been now sharing for many, many years around intuition and why it's important and how to connect to it, I felt like it was time to create a course that really does empower through different ways, and some of it quite playful. So there's a game for like every week that you can play for that particular theme. That means that, you know, I try to find this balance between making a course that's online but also really offline. And so it's not like sitting there watching. There are like workshops with each of the different themes in the course, but you can also listen to them in your headphones as you're walking around outside, you know, that it doesn't have to be like I'm going to sit in the computer and do my course. And so there's these games and there's meditative like activations with energy work around like really clearing and opening like the transmission of these particular qualities. Because I believe that we all have all of this inside of us, but a lot of us didn't know how to activate it or open it. I've had to explore that because of the book and then the questions that have come through it. And actually, what's been really beautiful is that in that exploration, I've opened up to some human teachers, but mostly more than human teachers that have been able to show me and support me in creating this work. And a big part of what I'm sharing is also how to do that, which isn't something I was ever really like, you know, I didn't know that I could do. Or I had one amazing teacher, mystic friend that did help to open that up. And I feel like that's what we need. We need guides that kind of help us to open things up, help us to see allies, mentors. And then through that, so much can come through. And you can tell the difference of when you're experiencing like intuition, wisdom, something that's coming in from the modern human world that's really of quality, and like chatter. Like they have such different qualities to them. And so over this 4-week, it's a 4-week course, but there's like 6 weeks because there's roots at the beginning and wings at the end to kind of ground. And I've also done it in a way where it can be done over a moon cycle, or you can also just go in and do it all in a week, like, and then just keep playing with the different tools. There's the games and there's a trust tool. So there's something that you can actually really work on your own trust, your own relationship with yourself and your own ability to connect to a divine authority within you. And the activations, and there's contemplations. There's also an unlearning, like a space to kind of like undo something because a lot of what we need to do in order to make space is really to undo a lot of what keeps us really full, both in our lives and our time and our physical spaces, as well as in our inner space and those patterns and particular dynamics that we have become used to, and the ways of relating with ourselves, that often means that there's no space for something else. I hope that it's really grounded because I've made it not at a time when I was in my treehouse, but I've actually made it at a time where I'm in a really intense situation where, I don't have my perfect magic studio. I feel like that's also important, that we have to be able to anchor all of this in and amongst everything else that's going on, that we don't want to be afraid of ourselves, like, okay, but I'm not yet enough in order to do that, or I'm not ready. Like there's a space of learning how to integrate these skills on the go and on the move, and it does take some practice, and you can always tell the difference. Like I know that sometimes when I'm trying to really tune into my intuition about something, and perhaps I'm in a space where there's a lot of really intense energy and demands on my time, and sometimes in that space I will be able to feel that. I'll feel it in my bones, like, and other times I'll be like, oh, it's just all it's just not happening. So I will come back to that, and I will know that, like, okay, this might not be the most grounded expression, but you know, just takes going outside for a few moments, like looking up at the sky, feeling your feet on the ground, to reconnect. And we can all do that, even in big cities, but even big cities have so much nature in them. And I do feel like that is the key, because it's understanding ourselves as part of a bigger system of reality. If we just understand ourselves in this very, very human way, then we're going to, of course, be more impacted by what this teacher said and what this person said and this human and that human and this book and this. And actually, I feel like if we're able to understand ourselves on a much different scale to that, and in deep time, and as one species in amongst a whole interspecies planetary experience, then it's easier for us to connect into more of that intuitive wisdom and less of that human story and conditioned story. In the course itself, it's much easier than that. Maybe I don't think I talk like that in the course. I feel like that's what's coming through whilst I'm sitting here with you. But I tried to make it really, really grounded and easy and fun, accessible, and also just deepening. Like, I've got a lot from playing these games, and I have got a lot from revisiting all of what's come through for this course. So I've tried to make it so that if you're somebody that is already like really connected to your intuition, like this might take that to a whole nother level. And if you're someone that feels really like, I just don't know, then that will open up the space. And it's a journey. It's like, how can we then also be like really humble with this connection and with this space, and also know that we might still have moments of indecision and confusion and not being able to hear that. I certainly do, and that's also okay, because I've also come a long way with that relationship and with letting go of patterns and conditioning and releasing some of the other voices that were in my head telling me how things, quote unquote, should be, to come into this other space, which allows me to really dream in another way of being in those day-to-day moments of life.
Thank you for tuning in. If you are enjoying this episode, do join our membership. For a small contribution, you can be part of our community, where we deepen the conversation and offer spaces of learning and embodiment. As a member, you are a patron supporting the making of this show, keeping the episodes full length, free and accessible for all. And you receive a number of benefits, such as monthly soul space, going deeper sessions, access to our library of workshops, and discounts on all our online and in-person experiences. Our membership is what makes us able to make this show and stay advertising free in a world that is always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. Head to allthatweare.org/membership to find out more and join today.
There was a quote I heard this morning. It was on episode 156 with Vanessa Adriotti. And she said, don't hold the being hostage to the knowing. And I feel like in the course, there are a lot of courses maybe we want to learn the information. We feel like once we've learned the information, we can then go and do the thing. But with intuition and with those games and with those practices, it's like actually just step into the being, just be it, try it, like actually like do it, because there's not a piece of information that's gonna suddenly be like, oh great, now I know what my intuition is and know what it feels like. So that sounds, really beautiful invitation to actually into the being, into the doing in a way.
Absolutely. And we learn somatically and we learn through experience. That is just what I feel like that's how all humans learn, not just neurodiverse, highly sensitive humans, but actually I think that's how all of us learn the best, by experiencing something and doing it and being shown. And we get really overwhelmed with all of the information. I went to the gym recently. Why is that such a funny idea?
Not the sentence I expected you to say.
So I've joined this gym in Newton Abbot, which is a town in Devon, which is not a hippie town. and it's close to my mum's. And actually, I joined this particular gym because some of my quite shamanic friends have also joined this particular gym. It's very affordable. And I went on my induction, and you were right to laugh because I'm not a very deep, experienced gym person. But I actually really like the feeling of being in the gym because it's so different from the rest of my world. I like how it feels to walk in and out of the gym. It's different to yoga, which I absolutely love and adore. But it's sometimes, I think, especially because of what I'm experiencing at the moment, it's quite nice to just go into an environment and be in the strength. And actually that kind of strength training and weights for women of my age is amazing. And I've always actually found the arm balance stuff in yoga really tricky, but I find weights actually really fun. So I went to the gym and I was having my induction, and they have these really amazing machines at this particular gym for weights, but they're isolated. So instead of just picking up weights, you'll be sat on a machine doing reps that are specifically for your arms or specifically for your back or for your legs, and then the machine kind of counterbalances everything else, so you don't have to pay as much attention to every single part of your body whilst you're lifting the weight. You can kind of focus a bit on one part and be supported.
Yeah.
He was showing me these machines. There's about 8 of them. And he just went one after the other. And he was getting on them and showing me how they work and saying, well, with this one, you move this here and you do that there. And we went to 8 of these machines. And at the end of that, I was just completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And did want to leave the gym. And I realized it was because in the worlds of learning that I have been part of and that I create, we have such a strong understanding of somatic experience and of how information really does come into the whole body mind. And that if you just reel off a whole load of information to somebody, it's going to go over their head. And then actually that person might now have any idea how to use any of those machines and so then I did say to him, could we actually do this differently, where we go to each machine and I use it and you show me if I'm doing it right, and then at least I can create some memory in my body of how this machine works.
Yeah.
I found it really interesting that that's still not how, even with something so physical as the gym, it's still not how people explain things in a gym. And so whenever I create spaces of learning or unlearning, it's always about experiencing, and it's often actually less about explaining the why and more about experiencing the sensation and then allowing that wisdom to open up and come into being. I mean, of course, on the Reclaim Your Intuition course, there is some of the why, and it lands in creativity, which is really nice. Creativity is the final part, and there's a ritual for every theme as well. So you actually get to come into that space of ritual and ceremony and create something. And that also really anchors that experience of a change within you, alongside it being an experience of a shift in the what's bigger than you as well, and allows you to really create those connections of support and holding. In essence, create a bigger, deeper, and more efficient system of belonging and a network of belonging and holding, which I feel is what we don't have, most of us. Some people do have that in their families and in their communities, and they're incredibly lucky to have that. And of course, we have that in a lot of Indigenous communities, but in many Western cultures, and then especially where there's been any kind of migration, immigration, moving patterns, then that gets disconnected. And actually, I really feel that so much of what creates a beautiful human experience, and a human experience that allows us to to really like come into that beauty of our soul is to have networks of belonging that we're tapped into and that are holding us and that are supporting us. And if you can create that with humans, great. And it's important that we do create it with humans, but it's important that we create it with the more than human world. We want to create as much as possible in our human relationships for our network of belonging. And we all want more beautiful, authentic, safe relationships that we're part of, like romantically and in our friendships and with our family and with our local community and beyond. Like we all want that and we all need that, and we all do so much better at everything if we have that. And even if we do have that, or especially if we don't, we can still have that through connecting deeper to the more than human world. And it's important because the more than human world is here. And so we have to have that deeper relational experience. And for me, it's been a lifesaver, I would say, like with full humility and whole heart, that if I wasn't able to tap into that kind of belonging and those kind of wisdom and holding channels, like I don't know if I would be here or how I would be here. I've been able to do it with ancestors that I, live half a world away from where they lived and don't even speak the same languages as. And yet I've been able to create really dynamic relationships with my ancestors and to really feel them holding me and guiding me. And with the trees and the earth and the land and the flowers and the birds and all of it, like to have plant allies and to have allies in the astral worlds, it makes life completely different. We all have an opportunity to experience life in the astral worlds as well as in this physical plane of reality, and we do, whether we realize it or not. And I'm always somewhat amazed by that, knowing that so many of us have whole experiences there, but we kind of pretend we don't when we're just having coffee with people and stuff like that. I was doing a ritual. I was doing it with a group of people in the astral space, and I just felt like, we'll just try it as an experiment, and I don't know what will happen. I do a lot of meditation and healing work when I'm working one-on-one with somebody where we're in an astral place, and I'm sharing what I see, and they often are feeling it and experiencing it at the same time. Or if people are in plant medicine work or something, they will might talk about a shared experience of being in an astral place. But it was beautiful. We were on Zoom, and I was like, let's just do, as for an experiment, let's do this, close our eyes. And I invited us in the astral plane to a fire circle in a sacred grove, and everybody was there and they saw things. And I was sharing some of what was happening and what we were doing. And then I was inviting them to share things, and they were seeing the same things as what I was seeing, all four of us. And we'd never done that before. We didn't even know that we could do that before. And this was a healing ceremony. It was actually a healing ceremony for me. And I was working with a very specific bit of patterning, and I wanted the support of some friends on the path to hold that energy with me, to witness it with me, and to help shift it. And as I was offering up these patterns to this fire, and they were there, and and we were all like around this fire, and then there was this celebration part afterwards, and I was being gifted like different adornment items that were kind of representing this shift of what I just released and then what was opening up in that space. And they could see it, like these different things that suddenly were appearing on my body, and I could see them too. And it just speaks to me of like how much is going on at any one time that we don't tend to, or that we don't imagine that we could even go into that space with someone else. yeah, I feel like that is what can happen, and that we are in those spaces a lot. We're in those spaces a lot when we sleep at night, and we're in those spaces often when we're sat meditating, or even when we're just being and we're doing something else. There's that plane is active. It would be really powerful if more and more of us can step into that understanding of our reality. And so yes, on one hand, intuition is like being able to make better decisions for ourselves, and it's empowering, and it creates confidence, and it allows us to really connect more to like who we are and what it is that our soul really is here for. And on another level, it opens up like a whole other way of relating to everything, and whole other languages. You know, energy is our first language. It is the language that we really live in and that we communicate in the most, whether we know that or not. And it's why so much of what happens and where conflicts come from, as well as where like love and connection comes from, it is in the unspoken, because it's all there.
Thank you so much for sharing that experience. I've never really heard someone talk about a collective experience in that lunar consciousness space. And yeah, just like feeling that in my body, like, oh, that's possible. Because I feel like sometimes too, these experiences that are beyond comprehension, more than human, these experiences we have as individuals sometimes can push us more into individuality, because we actually don't know how to share them. And because no one else was there with us, we don't really have the words, because it's beyond words. And then actually, even with other people sometimes who also have those experiences, like you say, we don't share them because we just don't, and I don't know, we don't. Sometimes it can feel isolating to be experiencing something so beautiful. So wow, just like the possibility of collective astral journeying is, thank you for sharing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was a push for me. It was an edge to open up that space. And I had really no idea, you know, for all I knew, the others might just be like, yeah.
I was actually doing my shopping list in my head, but glad you had a good time.
Yeah, totally. Could have been like that. But it wasn't. And it was really moving and powerful for all of us to know that we could be there. And I often have this sense, I've been somewhere with someone before, like yes, deja vu, but sometimes it is more astral. It's like, oh, like, yeah. And you know, we have different kinds of dreams at night, and some of them are kind of more processy, and some of them are more oracular, and some of them are more like astral experiencing. It's always really powerful when I love it when I have a really strong dream at night about someone. And I often take the opportunity to message them or to text them.
Text them about
really?
This crazy big beautiful experience.
Really, I wanna, you know, touch them. Yeah, and be like, wow, we had this incredible experience together. But yeah, I text them, go, oh, you're in my dream last night, how you doing?
I had this dream once about a past version of Jasmine, myself, little Jazz, and we hugged. And when we hugged, I knew that she was having the same dream in deep time space. It was me, and I've never felt so wonderful as when I was hugging myself. It was so beautiful. And then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I can't tell her, but I know she knows because it's already happened.
Yeah.
But it was like, and often I dream about people who have died, and you wake up and you're like, thank you so much for visiting me. I can't, like, there's no way to tell you. But yeah, I too love being visited in dreams by friends, whether they're alive, dead, or past, or future, and having that deep connection in a different plane.
Yeah, I know that, I mean, there's so many different ways of interpreting dreams, and in a Jungian dream analysis, like, they're always an aspect of yourself. But I feel like sometimes you're having an astral experience with that person. Yeah, and that perhaps that person can feel it. I was doing a one-to-one session with someone yesterday, and there was this moment where her, like, 7-year-old showed up, and and I was explaining like what she was wearing and what she was doing and what she wanted to share, and it was just really profound. And then they were able to come into that space of connecting, and that part of her was then integrated more in with where she is. And then we went into this other space where some really deep ancestral energies were moving through. You know, often it's a lot like processing deep ancestral energies, but it was really beautiful the way that it came through as this like grief, but like the complete honor it was to be able to be in a space of living a very different kind of life and then being able to process some of that grief. And then I started to see her singing to the river, and it was like an invitation for her that is a really beautiful way that her ancestors were inviting her to keep moving that energy, to go to some water and to sing. And I guess this is the other thing with the unseen world, is that what can come through in that space of our pure intuition and inner knowing, it's just so much more miraculous than anything that we think we can do or would do or could do. I was hosting a retreat in the Forest of Dean, and I went to the spring a couple of hours before everyone arrived, and we were planning to do a rebirth ritual and bathe in these waters. And as soon as I got to the spring, not only was she really trying to pull me in there, she gave me a song, and it was a whole song that I didn't know before, that had a whole tune and words. And I'm not somebody that can just sort of sit around with a guitar and write a song, but when I go to special spaces, or when I'm sat with a tree or with some water, or it's even happened in the circle of a podcast before, like a song will just come through. And that's, for me, this is the interplay between intuition and creativity, and why they're kind of the same energy. It's being tapped into that energy. And the same happens with poems, or, you know, it's like something will just come through, and it's like, and it's come so formed. We were singing a song before we pressed record that had come through a friend of mine. And it's so like, you know, how come every line of the verses are like so exact and they fit into the space of that melody? Like, it's incredible that it comes through like that. And it's not through her being like, oh, like what rhymes with dragon? Like, you know, it just came. And every part of it means something. And I often find that when that song's coming through, the pitch of my voice and my ability to sing is better.
Changes.
Yeah, I would say, like, objectively it's better. Than in other moments. But yes, it changes. There's a more graceful presence.
I'm hearing a lot of stories of people having songs come through at the moment, and I'm wondering if it's got to do with the dragons or just simply people's own connectedness to the ecology around them. But it seems to be quite a common theme that there's these songs being given by the land, not even being found through old songs, but just, yeah, finding their places.
The earth loves our songs, and that's one of the ways that we can gift as humans back to the earth. Yes, also plant seeds and, you know, take care of the earth on that level. It's an edge for me that I'm yet to really work with. But when we're in that space of ritual and communion and connecting, like a tree loves you to sing a song, do a dance. Those are the offerings of reciprocity. It doesn't always have to be that you bring something physical. It can be that you give that part of yourself, and often that, you know, you're receiving the song and you're giving it back, and so there's even that reciprocity is happening too. But I feel like it's such an important part of being human to sing.
That really brought up what I'm fairly certain it was Zach Bush shared about allowing a tree to witness you.
Yeah, maybe the white lions were witnessing him, or a tree, or
yes, yeah,
many aspects of the earth.
Yes, and actually, I think singing to the tree and singing to the river, allowing that moment to actually be about also you being witnessed, is beautiful.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask something that came up a couple of days ago in a conversation with you and I, and it kind of ties into what you were speaking about earlier about when you actually were birthing this intuition course. It's not that you were, in a treehouse surrounded by nature. You were actually just in life, really in it. You've been sharing beautiful conversations with people for 7 years and tending to this space. And I'd love to know which, or if there are threads, what threads have really landed for you from some of these conversations, whether it's something that simply came from the being together with someone, or whether it was actually someone's ideas or whatever it was, some things that maybe are deeply integrated into who you are and how you carry yourself through this time of great responsibility.
It's really hard for me to say, oh, this person said this and this person said that, because 7 years is a huge chunk of life. And some of it was coming through anyway in my own relationships with life and things that I was studying and teachers that I was with, and everything else that we've been talking about, this relationship that I've been cultivating to be able to experience life in this fuller way. What I can say is that it's been really amazing and interesting to get to sit with so many different people. The thing that's the most alive for me in how this podcast has changed who I am is that when I started, I wanted to weave together worlds and that I felt were very siloed, that I felt were interrelated. And nobody was telling me that they were interrelated. Everyone was telling me that they were siloed. And actually, everyone was often telling me throughout my life that my way of looking at things was too complicated, and I was always trying to do too many things at the same time, and I was bringing too much in together. That was the feedback on my dissertation, for example, which was that it was about too many things. And I was like, well, it's about politics and culture, so it has to be about a lot of different things and how they fit together, because that is actually how we experience life and the world and ourselves. But I feel like I was often told, no, things are like this, and people be an expert in this, and everything's very narrow and disconnected, and didn't ever feel right. And I feel like what I can see now, 7 years later, is that it's also become normal now that these things are all interrelated and are woven together. Whereas I do remember when I first said, it's exploring the weave between politics, sustainability, creativity, and spirituality. Those were the words at the beginning. Change the words because, people, I don't like the word sustainability anymore. And so, now we're regeneration, and we changed politics for activism, we changed the spirituality for the sacred. But I was told that those things were really different. And I feel like now it's understood that they're not. And also that people that I was connected to that were into one thing would most certainly not be into another. Whereas now I feel like people that I maybe knew that were more on the activist side are also now very connected to like the earth and the sacred. People that are more political are also more creative now. Like those lines have got torn down, which is wonderful. And that's what I set out to speak to. And so I feel like in my own experience, that's been validated like by community and by others saying, oh, thank you for creating this space of interrelation and a space that does explore how things weave together. That there isn't just this kind of this very siloed way, or you could be a polymath, but you have to be really good at all those things. It was, I was often told, you're interested in too many things, it's confusing. And so that sense of that bigness of interrelativity and how our personal relationships impact our planetary ecology and all of that, I feel like that's been really beautiful to recognize that we're all working on the same thing, however we tend to it, and that the podcast has also become like this North Star for me, and it means that I stay connected to that aspect of myself, which is hard sometimes in and amongst the things that I've got going on in my life at the moment. It's not always easy to feel like I have space for those things, although we've just come and sat here and it's all there. It's not like it ever goes anywhere, that's the thing. But if you saw what my physical reality was like 3 hours ago, you wouldn't even imagine that I would then be coming here and sitting here and that this is what would come through in a conversation. And so I feel like that's also important to honor, that we are able to move between worlds and in ourselves and in what we experience, and it keeps bringing to me incredible human beings, which keep also reminding me of what's possible. And just like in those words that you read out from the very beginning and the dreaming in of this podcast, like it does do that. Yeah, there are aspects about it that are also a little bit problematic in today's world. That's something that I reflect on a lot, and I don't really have the answers to, particularly around cancel culture and where we're at with that. There are people that have been on this podcast that I feel have behaved despicably in some areas of their lives, mostly as a woman that hasn't been married for a lot of this period of making this podcast. I've seen some things that I would love to have not seen. Perhaps when they're going on a podcast with a married man, he never gets to see that side of them, so he doesn't then know that, and he's not holding that aspect of them. That I find really difficult. And then it's like, well, it's not necessarily like they did something awful, but definitely there's a shadow and something that's out of integrity and something that didn't feel very good. And then it's like, do I just delete the podcast and take that person off the platform? Or is the fact that they can articulate something really, really well in a way that really opens and inspires and creates something for someone, does that mean that their place is necessary in the matrix? And do I want to be a canceller of humans? But also, do I want to give people platforms that I don't fully always feel that they're in integrity? Or what if they were just out of integrity like one moment and 98% of the time they are, like, and then how am I the judge of that? I do lose some sleep on some of these questions sometimes, and that thing of like, who am I choosing to platform, and who am I putting more out into the world? And because we do have this culture of pedestals and fame and power and all of that. So I definitely do sometimes wonder about that, and wonder, whether that's my place or not. And also, people change and evolve so much. And when I listen to older episodes, I don't recognize myself. Sometimes that's really great. Like I come across a way wiser version of myself from the past. And I learn something in this present moment from that part of myself. And I don't listen to loads of episodes of the podcast all the time, but I do every now and then listen to old episodes, and I'm always really surprised by what comes through. And so we are creating these like archives of past moments, but they're also present and future moments perhaps. And so that's really, I find that all really fascinating. my mum listens to podcasts in the morning, and she often likes to listen to mine, and she's often in the same room that I'm in. So then that's also quite a strange kind of meta experience. Yeah, well, I joked, and I'm like, oh, it's my higher self. And I'm like remembering that moment of being sat somewhere out far away with this other person in a completely different moment of what I perceived life and reality in the world to be. And yeah, it's kind of interesting to experience that.
It's like brings a whole new meaning to all that we are when you actually have these, what did you call it? These saved moments in time. And that was also all that you are. And that is also still all that you are. And it's just like all there in this glorious pot of beautiful Amisha and every other human.
Absolutely. And sometimes I think about just deleting everything that's out there, partly because I don't know if I really want to be on the internet so much. And because some of it does feel like the episodes around like the Me Too era, like they were like, whew, like they're quite hard to listen to, some of them, like now, not because I feel embarrassed about myself, but just because I can feel the journey and the pain that's like there in everyone as they're talking about those things. And I'm like, does all this need to still live on the internet? And also I feel like just because podcasts have become such a thing, it's become this like mass thing, and everyone does it, and a lot of people are making a lot of money from it. I don't know how. I haven't figured that bit out after 7 years. Still don't have, after 7 years, like a thriving membership that supports the making of the podcast. So I'm still paying to make this podcast, and Annegret and Mary are still giving their time at a really like reduced rate, and we do it because we love it, and we would also love that not to be the case, but that hasn't been the case. And so then when we check in, do we want to keep going? It's a yes, because we all feel like we learn so much from it, and it anchors us into a more grounded aspect of us as well. And I'm really grateful for that and the support of that team. Of course, I would love for that to be different, so that there was just more ease, especially at this particular time in life where I'm holding a lot, and just anywhere that there could be a bit more ease, it would be gratefully received. And as there are like loads and loads of podcasts, and it's about creating all this content, and I'm like, oh, and I it's not where I'm coming from, and I feel like I'm also not coming from this place of like perfect solutions and answers, and like, I don't entitle our episodes "How to Have Great Sex Tonight" or 5 ways to make more money.
Just call this episode
doing what you love. Go to the astral planes. That's how. Then work out how to be with that person astrally and physically at the same time, and then boom!
There you go. There's your answer, folks.
Yeah, so we're not doing that, which means that we're not really competing in the space of where all these other podcasts have come in, and a lot of them are obviously people, celebrities and all of this, and it's feeding now into all of that culture. And it's also weird that like you don't get, now podcasts are on all these different platforms, but podcast makers don't get anything for the listening time.
Yeah.
And so that also feels like, it's now become an industry of celebrity sponsorship culture, which is just not what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And so I feel compelled to keep creating this thing that is like the tree that you can nestle up against, that isn't going to give you any bite-sized answers, but is going to feed your soul and your inner wisdom, and bring in new ideas and connect different things in your understanding, and open that space of really living with more integrity and depth and grace and love and mess. And navigating these times, which are really challenging in so many different ways. Yeah, I feel to keep doing that, but I feel like there's a lot that's a lot louder. So then part of me does wonder, like, oh, is this still necessary or needed? And I guess we'll always keep asking that for every series. Do we want to do another one? Does it feel right? But I've really enjoyed this series. One of the things that's made this series really a lot more enjoyable again is getting to do more in person again.
Yeah.
Which takes out some of the transactional energy that I find that when you've just got this like 2-hour window, and some guests don't like the fact that it's 2 hours because it feels too long, and it's in the midst of someone's day and they've been on this call and that call, and there's not this relational time. It's so different from when you come and spend time with somebody and then settle into connection and then share, and then there's normally more time that you hang out with that person afterwards, before, and it feels like a love letter that we've created. And I think you can hear that in the conversations. We've not made any content. We've not filled you with content.
We've written a love letter.
Yeah.
I want to take this moment, this really beautiful moment, to loudly and also publicly thank you so deeply from the bottom of my heart for following the dream and creating the dream and creating this platform and finding beautiful people to converse with and finding ways for you to continue that and staying in integrity to the yes, because I can see little flashes in my mind of moments in different podcasts in the episodes I listened to that like literally changed my life in that moment. Something shifted, and I can feel. There's one with Isla, and there's one with Vanessa, and there's one with I can see them, and yeah, for years like this was that tree, and I know that will be the case for so many people. And so I want to take this moment on hopefully behalf of those people and on behalf of the more than human who has. Someone may have listened to an episode, then they went and they sat with their tree in their garden, like on all those beings. Thank you for creating it and for continuing it and for pouring so much love into it, because it is so felt. Even when it hasn't been easy or it's been felt a little bit more like a job, all of it has just meant so much, and to my family, but I know to so many other people, and it's connected me with you through this crazy cosmic line. So thank you, Amisha.
Yeah, you're so welcome, Jasmine. And I totally wouldn't have invited you to come and help me declutter my mum's house if I knew that you listened to the podcast.
I kept my fangirling till later.
But that's also been a really beautiful, powerful experience it has for me, to allow all of the worlds to come together. And again, we just need to have less silos, less projections, and just be with the ever complicated mess of what it is to be here. Yeah. How was that for you, Jasmine? When you discovered I didn't live in a temple space out off grid.
For me, it was like, this is the definition of all that we are. Like, this woman is living this shit. Like, this is not pretend, and almost that might have been if you'd lived where we're sitting right now, and you'd had this perfect garden that you tended to, like, yeah, it would have been magic. But yeah, it was instead it was meeting someone in the depth of reality in a different stage of life, and and I was fucking honored to get to witness that. I am honored to get to witness that, to get to sit with your mum and sing to her, and yeah, it's a blessing. It's been a wild journey. A blessing.
Yeah, and my mum has Parkinson's and dementia, which has been mentioned in some other episodes, and it's a really full-on experience. for her and for me. And it's been really nice that you've come and been part of it.
So we're sitting here in Devon, in the locality where you live at the moment. And I know that there's a beautiful opportunity coming up for people here or around here or who want to come here to gather. So I'd love to hear you speak about that.
Yeah, well, Jasmine will be there.
I'll be there.
And so we have the Friday night will be a live podcast, and it's in this venue that overlooks the river. And we'll be doing a live podcast with Helena Norbeck Hodge, Anthea Lawson, and Jay Spencer Keys, where we'll be exploring how do we create planetary transformation in the local day-to-day moments of our lives. Yeah, we still have some space for that. So it would be so nice to meet anyone that is listening from this area of Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, that's around and that wants to come and be in person and kind of connect in the realness of, yeah, space and time. And then on the Saturday, we're going to do a day retreat around this theme of remembering. And that theme is really about connecting to that very beauty that we've been talking about all through this conversation. Hopefully you've been feeling in yourselves. I've certainly been feeling it in myself and in you. And in Shambo, although I'd say he did get distracted at a few points. But maybe that's me also not fully understanding.
This is deep remembering.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be doing some beautiful ritual and embodiment, and perhaps we'll sing to the river, and there'll be a space to connect. And it's a really nice day retreat, and we can probably help with lit rides from Totnes if people want to get the train down and join us. And we'll be there together. And I want to do more things in person and more things online. But I also am quite stretched in the time that I have to organize these things. So yeah, don't count on there being always more. Like, also come to this one and show me that you want more of it as well. It helps. I know we're all feeling stretched with things to go to and time and money and all of it, but yeah, it's really, really nice to be together.
Dates?
That is the 5th and the 6th of July, which is very soon as you're listening to this. But maybe something has just changed in your plans and you can come and be with us. And there is an idea to also have some time on Dartmoor with stories and long, exquisite poems and pilgrimage and singing. And that will be at another time. If there's a community in Devon, I think that's also what I'm trying to sense out. Is there in all that we are community here? So if you're here and you can't make this weekend, but you would like there to be more stuff here, then also write in and share that, and we can invite you to some things here on this land where we're sitting right now, where there's a beautiful space and a yurt here, and we could do some really nice things here.
Thank you for all your sharing, for giving us some beautiful insight into this journey for you and who you are and how it weaves. It's been just a real honor to get to ask you these questions and to get to sit with you and hold it in this land. It feels, this land has just so magically held this, and there have been real moments where I just feel really nourished and tingled. So thank you for coming to this exact spot in this exact moment and being all that you are.
Thank you, Jasmine, for holding this gorgeous space and for what you've opened up through this conversation, and for hosting us here at the hearth, and for all that you are.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on allthatweare.org. We give space to our guests to share their perspective without debating it or fact-checking, as this approach allows for deep, unedited conversations from the heart. We trust your discernment and wisdom to take what is useful and challenge what isn't in your own understanding. We offer spaces for discussion and integration in our membership community, which we would love for you to join. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible by you, our beautiful community. If you loved this and would like to connect more deeply with us, please join our membership. You choose what you contribute based on our sliding scale, and you become a patron whose support makes this podcast happen, as well as receiving access to a library of many resources and invitations to nourishing events. Please also hit subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen so others can find us. This podcast is made by an all-female global team. Me, Amisha Ghadiali, producer and host, Annegret Folderbach, who crafts the words that accompany each episode, and Mary Chan, who edits the sound so skillfully. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. It invites the full power of the more than human world, nature, the unseen, our ancestors, and our future generations. It reminds us that we never exist in silo, through borders, timelines, or polarity, that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.